Welcome back, everyone. So I'm continuing now on my brother's Winchester Model 70. So I didn't show it, but I've removed the barrel and taken all the rest of the parts out of the action, and we're getting ready to true up the action. Now, on the action, I did it a little bit different of a way than I've seen before, but I didn't really want to buy another tool. So what I did is I machined this aluminum shaft to where it just barely fit inside the bore of this action, and then I fit the action on there, and then I tightened the screws, which was just really a few tenths of slop. It was next to nothing. Then we're going to machine the face. So now if you look at the indicator, it looks like it's about 1.5 thousandths out, which really is not bad at all. Oh, we went to this much trouble, we're going to go ahead and cut it, and might as well, we're already there. So we're going to go ahead and cut it and face it and true it. I don't know if you'd actually see a difference. That'd be a test I'd like to do sometime. But in the process of disassembling this thing, we ended up taking this barrel off, and I actually had my brother help me do it. And this barrel was on tighter than I could have ever imagined. So I used a barrel vise with oak blocks, used gum rosin, and tightened it down to the point that we were squeezing the oak as much as possible. Used my action wrench, and no matter what we were doing, it was still slipping in the barrel vise. We were no telling how many 100 foot-pounds of torque we had on it. That thing was not coming loose. So unfortunately, this is a barrel we weren't going to use again. I would have maybe tried it on something, but unfortunately we ended up having to take a pipe wrench on the barrel, put the action vise in action wrench in the vise, and taken a pipe wrench on the barrel, and it used heat used a little torch, and we were finally able to get it broke loose. It was on so ungodly tight, couldn't believe it. But so now we've got it all taken apart, got it mounted in here, and as I showed, we checked the face of it, and we're going to get it as true as we possibly can. We're doing a good accuracy job on this, and then after we do this, we're actually going to machine the barrel, machine the threads in the barrel, cut the bolt nose recess, chamber it, and then at the very, very end, I'll have to mill out this little side pocket for the extractor to go in. So it's going to be 22250 Ackley improved, and this is part 2 of this whole process. So I'll show you all how it goes as we go along. So this next part here, I'm just checking the run out. It should be perfect as it is, because when you cut something, and as long as it stays rigid, it should be perfect. Now this part right here is something I want to talk about. There's lots of ways to align a tailstock. This, in my opinion, is the best way of doing it, because it is the actual center of the tailstock, of the machine center. By using an alignment bar, you are testing center somewhat, but you're also really seeing your lathe bed wear, however worn it may be. So this is the way that I do it, and I personally think it's the best way. So back working on the Winchester Model 70 again. Yesterday we last night we faced off the action. Now I've got the barrel set up in the lathe, and I'm going to be indicating it in on both ends. Back end, I'm just going to get rough close. This isn't the best way of doing it, but we're going to end up dialing in both ends to be relatively close. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to be drilling like a counterbore drill a little ways in. Then we're going to be measuring with my long stylus and my other indicator, my 10th indicator, and be dialing in right up inside of the throat in there. So it's going to take me a little bit of time. I'm going to dial in this, dial in that, drill it, then dial it in closer up at the throat, and then we'll go ahead, and after we do all that, we're going to cut this down, and then I'm going to thread this until the action screws on. Nice little fit there. Doesn't need to be like crazy tight, super precise. A little bit loose is perfectly fine. It's not going to affect anything. It's all going to shoulder up once it's tightened up. But then I'm going to thread it. Then we're going to cut our bolt nose recess just until our bolt will actually close in the action. Then we'll chamber it, and then after all that's done, I'll end up taking it out of the barrel and I'll mill the slot for the extractor. So we'll kind of show the little process while we're doing it and go from there.
And who's to say it's actually straight inside?
Now this next part here, all I'm really doing is I'm just getting this side close. It's first of all, it's a piece of hot rolled steel, so who knows how close it actually is. But the reason that I've got this piece hanging out like that is because my spindle in my lathe it's an industrial machine. It's not one of the small little gunsmith machines. It's an industrial machine, and it has a long spindle. So what I had to do was make a little piece that attaches to the muzzle of that barrel, and then I made this as an extension, and then clamping down on that one piece of copper ground wire, it'll allow it to be a pivot point. So all I'm doing on this end really is getting it close and then dialing it in the actual grooves of the barrel is going to be the part that really matters. And then this part right here is where I'm using my 10th indicator with a long stylus, and I am indicating off of the grooves right about at the point where the throat will be. And it's not really shown here, but I'm using that back end as a pivot point to align it as straight as possible. Another thing that I should probably talk about is I am not using a floating reamer holder. I've personally never used one. To me, a rigid setup is better, and if it's on center and your pilot fits the bore, then I personally have not found the need for one. So I kind of skipped over the actual threading and chambering part. We kind of got busy with that, and I just honestly forgot to film it. We did all that, got all that done, crowned the muzzle, and then right now what I'm doing is I am prepping the barrel for hot bluing. So this takes a lot of time, and what I did was I hand sanded it, just like I'd hand sand a knife, down to about a 1200 grit, and then the receiver, I actually stripped the bluing off of it, and then when I went to hot blue it, I blued everything as one. I plugged the end of the muzzle and the chamber end with a piece of wood, and then when I went on to blue it. So the hand sanding part takes a lot of time because there's a lot of machining marks I had to sand out. But in the end, it turned out pretty well. Alright, welcome back to the last part of this video. So there's a lot of steps in the threading and chambering the barrel and all that I didn't end up recording. What happened is I just kind of got involved in what I was doing and didn't film. I wish I would have, but I didn't. So the barrel is now installed on the action, chambered, crowned, everything's good to go. Now what I've done, I'm about to hot blue this rifle, so I had to strip all the bluing off of the receiver, and I ended up hand sanding the barrel to match the receiver, pretty much match the look of the receiver, so the bluing is all consistent across the whole rifle. So the barrel I hand sanded down to about 1200 grit, which is pretty much what the receiver kind of looks like. They look pretty similar right now. I didn't buff it to a mirror polish, I just did that. But yeah, so very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clean up the action and all them areas inside that I stripped the bluing off of with soap and water. I am going to do that and then scrub it down really good, rinse it all off, and then I'll put it in my bluing tank of boiling water, and then that'll clean it off, dry it out the rest of the way hopefully. And then I should be able to do that and go right into my bluing salts and blue this thing. Then after that, I'll be putting it back in the boiling water to neutralize the bluing solution. So this is something I've been wanting to do a long time. I'm getting ready to do it. I do have the muzzle and the action breech plugged. Now I'm using Brownell's Oxenate number 7 bluing salts, and it says in the instructions not to do this, but I've talked to a couple people that have hot blued before and they said they've done it. It says in there that it won't affect accuracy at all if you blue the whole thing, but I'm gonna go ahead and plug the ends. So I'm going to do that. And after that, I'm pretty much get all that done, and then I'm going to reassemble the rifle, take care of that one end on the fore end where its barrel's touching, get the barrel 100% free floated. But yeah, so one thing I do want to talk about, when I was looking up videos on rechambering Winchester Model 70s, I really didn't see much of this, so I wanted to talk about kind of the process. So what we did is we dialed in the barrel, dialed on the bore, and ended up, there's a very, very specific way that we had to do this because of the bolt nose recess and that extractor groove that's cut in there. Now moving forward, I'm not sure if it's actually necessary to have all that length and to mill that slot in there and everything, because I recently had a Ruger M77 in my shop that I threaded a barrel for a guy, and I noticed it had a very similar bolt face and extractor, very similar to the Model 70, and I noticed that it had just a flat breech. So I think if I ever do another one of these, I might take off the old barrel and then first just machine that off and see how it feeds. The only reason that I can see that bolt nose recess is truly necessary is just for feeding. But it would save a ton of time not to have to do that. So the way we ended up doing it is we indicated off of the bore in the lathe, and then the very first thing we did, we got our tenon cut to the right length. We pretty much matched this one. And then we had to thread the barrel until, and thread it, and got it to thread onto the action. So once we did that, we took the bolt all apart, took the extractor off of the bolt, put the bolt in there, and then we had to remove the action while it's all still in the lathe. And then we measured the angle of that bolt nose, and I don't have a bolt nose recess tool, so what we did is we took the compound and we angled it to match that angle. And so then we cut the bolt nose recess until we were finally able to close the bolt, and then went a few extra thousandths just to give a little bit of wiggle room. So now we've got the barrel threaded, the bolt nose recess cut, and then the bolt is fully going into the gun action. So now that after we did that, then we put the reamer in and we chambered the barrel, and then we chambered it until the bolt closed on a go gauge, didn't close on a no-go gauge. And then after we did all that, we left the barrel in the action, or first we took it out of the lathe, put the barrel in the action, and then I put some inletting black on the face of the bolt nose recess, where that right there, or the extractor I mean, and I put some inletting black on the face of that, and then we touched the inside of the barrel to see where we needed to machine it at. And we also did that while the barrel was torqued on. So we did that, took the barrel back off, then went to the mill using a slotting cutter, and we cut that extractor groove. And we cut it a little bit big just in case, and then turned out as a good thing we did, because it ended up not, we were a little bit off, but it was okay because we were still able to close the bolt. So that was the process of doing that, of chambering that barrel and fitting it to the gun, and then of course we crowned it too. But it was a very, very doing it the way we did it, it had to be a very, very specific set of steps in order. And whereas a lot of these guns now, you can just thread them and chamber them, and then you're pretty much done. So this is probably one of the more difficult barrels to chamber, and it's actually the second one I've ever done, so I was pretty happy with how it turned out. But yeah, I'm gonna get my tanks and my bluing salts all ready to go, and I'll try to show as much of that process as I can. So here are my bluing tanks. I'm doing this outside, and I had a little bit of trouble because of the wind, but I actually built the stand and burners myself. The tanks I purchased from Brownells, and as you can see, I'm getting a lot of soot. I need to try and fix that, but they did work. So there I went into the boiling water, and then next I went into the bluing salts, and I kind of waited, and then after it's in the bluing salts, about 30 minutes or so, took it back into the boiled water, and that is how it turned out. I was very pleased. Alright, and here's the final result. I had to do a couple little things to make the jewel trigger fit when I was putting it together, but it's free floated now, and it's finished, and the rifle belongs to my older brother, and he has been shooting it, and it is shot wonderfully. So, here I am testing the free floating, but thank you all for watching.